Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of World at War. I'm your host, Shivan Chanana. In what is turning out to be one of its biggest unrests in recent years, Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been rocked by violent clashes between anti-government protesters and Pakistani security forces since the 29th of September. Reportedly, at least 10 people have been killed and over 200 others have been injured in protests that erupted over rising living costs and government corruption. Now, the tally could be significantly higher considering the scant news that has emerged following an internet blackout. Reportedly, the local media has been warned by authorities against covering the daily demonstrations. In a bid to quell the protests, thousands of additional troops have been rushed to the region, bringing daily life to a standstill. Taking note of this crackdown, the Indian Foreign Ministry on Friday said that Pakistan must be held accountable for the horrific human rights violations in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. An agreement has been finalized to bring peace to the embattled region. The streets still remain tense. Our next report brings you the details.
Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Muzaffarabad, the largest city and the capital of Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir on Monday, demanding an immediate end to lucrative benefits for the entitled political class, such as free electricity and expensive cars.
The politicians here behave like gangsters over our heads. We want them gone and their privileges removed. The free electricity the people in the government receive should end. They should stand with us and facilitate us, instead of taking our votes and then turning against us.
When the poor here is sick or has a big illness like cancer or other serious diseases, he can't be treated here and just dies hoping the government would help. They say the poor should go to Islamabad or Rawalpindi, but how can a poor person afford this, go that far to get treated? They die hoping.
In subsequent days, the protests spread to the streets of Dadial, Rawalkot, Neelam Valley and Kotli. The violent protests, which erupted over the government's failure to meet 38 key demands, snowballed into a broader agitation against excesses by the military, bringing the region to a standstill. In apparent evidence of the mayhem and chaos, streets were stained with blood and littered with spent bullet casings, shards of glass and scattered stones. A callous government responded by rushing security forces numbering in thousands, who fired tear gas and live ammunition in an effort to hold back the crowds that reached up to 6,000 at their peak. Reportedly, 5 protesters were shot dead in Muzaffarabad, 5 in Dheerkot, and 2 in Dadial, in addition to at least 3 police personnel killed. Adding insult to injury, internet and mobile phone services were blocked and reportedly journalists were harassed to prevent rightful coverage of the demonstrations. The protests have been led by civil rights organization Awami Action Committee or AAC, formed to fight for local rights in the mostly rural region, in a scenario not unlike what is being witnessed in Pakistani provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. Though the government claims that it was ready for dialogue and had accepted 90% of the demands, the high-handed manner in which it has acted doesn't elicit much confidence. The Awami Action Committee, which has asked for affordable electricity, more hospitals, and for private mobile network providers to enter the market, too denied that its demand had been met.
They charge for internet and mobile services when there is no signal here. They are profiting in the name of 4G and 5G, while we get nothing. We are not begging. We want proper services. Some responsibilities lie with the federal government in Islamabad, and some with the local government. Yet neither is doing their job or settling these issues.
On Thursday, Amnesty International issued an appeal for an immediate, impartial and transparent investigation into the clashes, including the excessive use of force by law enforcement. The next day, Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that Pakistan must be held accountable for horrific human rights violations in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
We have seen reports on protests in several areas of Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including brutalities by Pakistani forces on innocent civilians. We believe that it is a natural consequence of Pakistan's oppressive approach and systemic plundering of resources from these territories, which remain under its forcible and illegal occupation. Pakistan must be held accountable for its horrific human rights violations.
It is to be noted that Pakistan has been ruled for decades by the army generals who, analysts opine, are at the center of real power in the South Asian nation, and any criticism of military is the proverbial red line not to be crossed. But the protesters in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, perhaps for the first time in decades, are in no mood to relent and are directly targeting the Pakistani government and the military. The Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, holidaying in London after his recent visit to the United States, has trouble brewing at home front, which is threatening to spiral out of control.
Two people were killed and at least 3 others were grievously injured in an attack outside a Manchester Synagogue on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Reportedly, the attacker, 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent, Jihad al-Shami, rammed a car directly into people before stabbing others on the fateful Thursday morning. The attacker was previously not known to British counter-terrorism police and was shot dead at the scene of the crime by quick response police. The United Kingdom authorities swiftly declared the attack as a terrorist incident, and security was immediately stepped up at synagogues nationwide. Our next report brings you the details.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack.
The city of Manchester, in the northwest of England, was jolted on Thursday morning by a car ramming and stabbing attack described by the police as a terrorist incident.
Counter-terrorism policing has declared this as a terrorist incident.
Reportedly, a car was driven directly at members of the public outside the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue. But the carnage didn't stop there, as the attacker, identified later as 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent, Jihad al-Shami, then proceeded to attack people with a knife. 2 local men, 53-year-old Adrian Dalby and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz, were killed and 4 others were injured in the horrific attack. Greater Manchester Police Chief Constable Stephen Watson, while speaking to reporters, thanked the security staff for their swift response and added that the assailant was wearing a vest that had the appearance of an explosive device, but it was not functional.
At this time, we know that a car was driven directly at members of the public outside the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue on Middleton Road, Crumsall, in Manchester. The driver of the car was seen then to attack people with a knife. He was wearing about his body a vest which had the appearance of an explosive device. There were a large number of worshippers attending the synagogue at the time of this attack, but thanks to the immediate bravery of security staff and the worshippers inside, as well as the fast response of the police, the attacker was prevented from gaining access. All those inside were safely contained until police were able to confirm that it was safe to leave the premises. I can confirm that 2 other individuals have been arrested in connection with this incident, and urgent inquiries are ongoing. We can confirm that 2 members of our Jewish community have sadly died as a result of this attack. Following a rapid response, armed officers from Greater Manchester Police intercepted the offender, and he was fatally shot by officers within 7 minutes of the original call. 4 further people remain in hospital, having suffered a variety of serious injuries, and their treatment is ongoing, and our thoughts are with them and their families.
Reportedly, one of the men killed and one of those injured was hit by police gunfire as they shot the attacker. Since the horrific attack, 3 people, 2 men in their 30s and a woman in her 60s, have been arrested on suspicion of terrorism-linked offences. Shockingly, the attack had come on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish religious calendar. A Manchester resident who lives near the synagogue that was attacked said that she was absolutely terrified and worried about her safety.
All I could hear was helicopters and I thought, what's going on? And then my mum said she saw 2 cars speeding right past the house, so I thought, oh, well, it's definitely something big, something connected. So I said, and then she said they're heading down that way, so I said, I wonder if it's at Shul. That's my mum, that's our local synagogue. So she said, I think you're right. And today is Yom Kippur, it's a very holy festival, and I'm Jewish and absolutely terrified. And our neighbour across the road, he goes to the synagogue and he was telling us what was going on. And it's just absolutely frightening because I'm scared for my own safety and my mum's safety, because I just feel that the Jewish, we're not pulling together anymore.
The next day, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, accompanied by his Jewish wife Victoria, visited the scene of the Manchester Synagogue car ramming and stabbing attack and vowed to do everything in his power to protect the Jewish community.
And so I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence protecting your community.
As a preventive measure, Britain was put on high alert to ensure the Jewish community's safety following the attack outside the Manchester Synagogue. The 2-year-long Israel's war in Gaza, in which more than 66,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces, has inflamed passions in Britain as well, with frequent pro-Palestinian rallies taking place in various cities. The rallies have been criticized by some for stoking anti-Semitism and fear in Jewish communities. On Friday, both Jewish and Muslim communities in Manchester stood in solidarity following the synagogue attack.
I think this is a wake-up call. I've spoken to many people. You had people from the mosque that turned up, and people coming to show their solidarity, showing their love. Yesterday I had a story that one of my neighbours who's Muslim and another neighbour who's Christian and myself, we hugged together and it's like, so they can't be in this community. I think that hopefully that this is a wake-up call.
At a dark and testing time, these sentiments of love, peace and positivity might prove to be the light at the end of a long dark tunnel.
In the North African country of Morocco, youth-led protests against corruption and demanding reforms to public healthcare and education have rocked the usually stable kingdom over the past week. The protests called by the online Gen Z 212 group, which has nearly 170,000 members and whose organizers remain anonymous, also called on the kingdom's prime minister, whose tenure is scheduled to end next year, to resign now. Rallies have taken place in capital Rabat, Agadir, Casablanca, Tangier, and so far 3 people have died in the worst street unrest in Morocco since mass demonstrations in the Rif region in northern Morocco in 2016-2017. This next report explores this further.
The Kingdom of Morocco has been shaken by a wave of youth-led protests that now spread across the North African country. The city centre has turned into an arena for demonstrations led by an anonymous collective known as Gen Z 212. What began as youth-driven demonstrations over failing public services has now descended into confrontations with police mass arrests, deaths, and widespread property damage. So what exactly is happening in Morocco? Who is behind these rallies? What are they demanding? And where might these protests take the country to? Dubbed the Gen Z protests, the unrest began on the 27th of September. These leaderless movements are organized on TikTok and Discord by a youth group called Gen Z 212. The name Gen Z indicates the age of the protesters, who are mostly in their teens or 20s, and the number 212 is Morocco's dialing prefix. The group Gen Z 212 first called for protest around a month ago on the social media platform Discord. It called for young people to protest to demand their rights. Young Moroccans say they are fed up with corruption, poor schools and hospitals, and uneven development across the country.
Young people are demanding schools and hospitals. What they are asking for is not impossible. These are necessities in Morocco. How can the authorities not understand this? Where is the government in all this? Where is Akanouch, who does nothing but talk? Young people have demands that are vital for Morocco, particularly in terms of hospitals and schools.
We went out to claim our legitimate rights, but we were rejected and repressed. I apologize. I am exhausted from running. We are no longer allowed to walk on public roads. We don't know why we were repressed when we were peaceful. We were pursued by the police, and we are not allowed to stand in public places.
Through chants and posters, the protesters contrasted the billions spent in investment toward preparation for the 2030 World Cup, with dire conditions visible in public services, pointing to new stadiums under construction or renovation across the country. Protesters chanted, "Stadiums are here, but where are the hospitals?"
We don't want football or anything else. If football had been good for us, it would have been introduced long ago and would have benefited young people. We want health. Our parents are suffering.
Some protesters even called for Moroccan Prime Minister Aziz Akanouch to resign. The call for resignation came after 3 people were shot and killed on the 1st of October by the police force in the southern town of Leclia, reportedly in self-defense. Amidst the escalating violence, Moroccan Prime Minister Aziz Akanouch stated that he is open to talks to end the protests. Though Morocco's king is the country's highest authority, protests in Morocco usually focus on the government charged with carrying out the king's agenda. With the country set to host the Africa Cup of Nations later this year and the parliamentary elections in 2026, the Gen Z unrest is now like a tough test to see how the monarchy and the government balance significant projects with simmering domestic frustrations of its youth.
According to the United Nations, at least 22 people have died and more than 100 have been injured since anti-government protests erupted in the poverty-stricken Indian Ocean nation of Madagascar on the 25th of September. Rejecting the figures as unverified, the Madagascar Foreign Ministry instead alleged that the United Nations tally was based on rumours and misinformation. The near-daily Gen Z protests over misgovernance and water and power cuts began in the capital city of Antananarivo, but have since spread to at least 8 other cities. This is despite President Andry Rajoelina sacking his government on Monday and offering to hold talks with young people. With protesters in no mood to relent, the president on Friday condemned the protests, calling them an attempt to topple his government. Next report explores the most significant challenge the president of Madagascar is facing since his 3rd re-election in 2023.
The Republic of Madagascar, lying off the southeastern coast of Africa, ranks among the world's poorest countries, despite vast natural resources. According to the World Bank, some 75% of the country's estimated 30 million population lived below the poverty line in 2022. On 25th of September, the largest and the capital city of the impoverished nation, Antananarivo, erupted in protests. Mobilized largely on social media and drawing mostly young demonstrators who demanded an end to repeated water and at times 12-hour-long power cuts.
Water and electricity are two of the fundamental pillars of development. You repeat this slogan constantly. Madagascar must develop. But you still have no solution, even though you have been in power for years. How many years have you been there?
51-year-old President Andry Rajoelina first came to power in 2009 by spearheading a popular movement and benefiting from a coup that ousted former President Marc Ravalomanana. In 2023, he was re-elected for a third term in a vote boycotted by the opposition and with less than half of registered voters participating. However, during his time in power, President Rajoelina has failed to turn around Madagascar's economic fortunes, with many challenges still plaguing the impoverished nation.
They say we are a TikTok generation, a generation of idiots. And when we rise up, they don't let us speak out about the country's problems. A message for you, Mr. Andry Rajoelina. When you led the protests, they let you do it. It was okay. But when we young people fight for the country, you stop us.
16 years in power, we've given him chance after chance. He makes us drunken promises. All he cares about is himself and his own family. Meanwhile, here we are dying of starvation.
It didn't help matters that the security forces, in the words of United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk, used unnecessary force to quell the unrest. As thousands of young protesters thronged the streets of the capital and several other cities in the island nation, security forces resorted to violent crackdown, with tear gas, rubber bullets, and even live ammunition being fired to disperse protesters. On Monday, in an apparent bid to placate the protesters, President Andry Rajoelina sacked his government following days of deadly unrest.
Pursuant to Article 54 of the Constitution, I have decided to terminate the functions of the Prime Minister and the government. While waiting for the formation of the new government, those in place will ensure the interim. During the next 3 days, we will receive the names of the Prime Minister. Then, after his appointment, a deadline will be given to him for the composition of the government.
Despite President Rajoelina's dismissal of the government, the protests have continued and spread to other cities, with demonstrators now demanding his resignation and the dissolution of key government institutions. In a country rocked by multiple uprisings, since it gained independence in 1960, the Gen Z movement is going from strength to strength and has even been endorsed by the opposition as well. Will the president, so far obdurate, read the writing on the wall, or will Madagascar plunge further into chaos? Only time will tell.
And that's all we could pack in for you in this edition of World at War. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Shivan Chanana signing off.